Bernadette Jones is a freelance HR consultant. She is certified as a senior professional in human resources, one of only 4,300 SPHRs in California. She has firsthand experience in small business, developing an HR department while growing from 2 to 10 and then as many as 15 employees. What are the first things that people really need to address, the most important minimum standards they need to meet for HR that won't get themselves in trouble?
Well, I think the most important thing for a small business, when you have an employee, even one employee, is to have your payroll done. And my suggestion is to use a payroll company to do that. It really keeps you compliant. You don't miss anything. It helps you to understand when you need to pay overtime, what the minimum wages are, all those kinds of things. It's very helpful, and it doesn't cost a lot.
Okay. So what would be, other than payroll, what's like the next, what would be like the next thing to consider?
Well, when you first hire your first employee, you have to comply with the FLSA, which is the Federal Labor Standards Act, and that governs pay for overtime, minimum wage, and then child labor laws. So you want to be very familiar with that. When do you have to pay overtime? What's the minimum wage? You want to become familiar with what is an exempt and a non-exempt employee, independent contractor versus an employee.
And we will go into the independent contractor later.
Okay. Yes, because those are very important because that can get you in a lot of trouble. So you want to be conscious of those laws. Then also the Immigration Standards Act, which makes you responsible for verifying that every employee is legal and available and able to work in the United States. So that means verifying ID, and everybody's familiar now. When you come for a job, you bring your Social Security card, a passport, and driver's license, or some of those items that really identify that you're able to work in the United States. So you want to be conscious that you're doing that. And then just make sure that when you do payroll, whether you use a bookkeeper, you do it yourself, or a payroll company, all the deductions are on the employee's paycheck stub. So a lot of small businesses will write a personal check or they'll write a business check.
Right.
And that doesn't account for the deductions. You don't see the deductions. You want to make sure that you make those deductions. So those are the first things that are most important when you hire an employee. You want to have an employee handbook, which many times that payroll company will assist you in putting together an employee handbook.
Really, even
very
just for one employee?
For one employee.
See, I never even thought about doing that till I had more,
Yes.
a whole group of people.
Mm-hmm. It eliminates a lot of issues, and so if the basic things are set out in an employee handbook, like you're an at-will employer, okay, so you want to make sure things like that are in the employee handbook. What are the benefits, if any? How are holidays handled? So all of those things with one employee it is very important, because one employee could cost you a lot of money if you don't do it right.
Right. Yeah, that is a burden. I know, for so long we would just sort of, holidays would come up and we just look around and go, hey, are we taking this holiday or are we working? It was very, very, very informal, but I guess I've been lucky.
Yes, yes. And, some of the statistics say that because with a small business, you typically have higher turnover than a larger business. And the Department of Labor says that 50% of employees leave within the first 6 months. So the more turnover you have, the more the increased liability you have for wrongful termination, lawsuit, discrimination in hiring, and wrongful termination lawsuit can cost you upwards of $85,000 just to be represented.
Right. That's
Now,
not even if you lose the case.
Right. That's just right or wrong. Okay. But if you lose the case, the average settlement is $500,000.
Wow. Well, that would put a lot of small businesses right out of business.
A lot of small businesses out. So that's something to be very concerned about. And so hence the idea of making sure that you have human resources support. Even if you don't have an individual person within the company who is a human resource professional, learn as much as you can. There's so much you can learn on the internet. And then you can supplement that with professional help. From an HR company, a professional employers organization, a payroll company.
Or someone like yourself.
Or someone like myself, independent consultant. That is the best thing you want to do starting off. So you don't have a huge expense, but at the same time you're protecting yourself.
Okay. Any particular websites that are really valuable for
Let's see, the Department of Labor, DFEH, which is the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which will have a lot of laws that you have to comply with. So those are some good places to start.
Check out Bernadette's full interview where she gives us a ton of great information on pitfalls to avoid, including how to classify your employees as exempt or non-exempt.
Because you want someone to be exempt doesn't mean they're actually exempt. So you want to make sure that the position that you're hiring for, it actually is an exempt position, because if you don't, then there are going to be overtime issues. If they work over the 40 hours and you don't pay overtime because they're exempt, you're paying them a salary, that can result in huge fines and then back pay for overtime.